Disney's flopping. Hard. Like, embarrassingly hard. Bombed movies, backlash from fans, internal chaos, and headlines that read more like bad PR scripts than actual news. And the wildest part? They don't seem to care. This isn't just a creative slump or a bad quarter. We're talking about a company that used to define childhood now scrambling to stay relevant, and failing spectacularly. But here's the question. If everything is crashing and burning, why are they still smiling through it? Is it arrogance? A bigger strategy? Or have they just completely forgotten what made people love them in the first place? To really understand the mess we're in now, we need to rewind. Because once upon a time, Disney was magic. The golden era, 1989 to 1999. When Disney still had a soul before the reboots, before the billion-dollar acquisitions, before Disney became a soulless content machine, it was actually good. Like magical, unforgettable, generation-defining good. This period was known as the Disney Renaissance, and it wasn't just some cute name fans made up. It was a real cultural reset. Let's take a second to remember when Disney actually made magic, not manufactured it through algorithms and market-tested diversity panels. We're talking about the Disney Renaissance, that glorious stretch from 1989 to 1999 when they dropped banger after banger. It kicked off in 1989 with The Little Mermaid, which revived Disney animation after years of mediocre box office returns. It was a full-blown return to the Broadway-style musical format, filled with rich, hand-drawn animation, timeless songs, and characters that actually made you feel something. And then, it just kept going. Hit after hit. Beauty and the Beast, 1991, which was so good it became the first animated film ever nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. Aladdin, 1992, which introduced us to Robin Williams' Genie, probably one of the most iconic animated performances of all time. The Lion King, 1994, which needs no introduction. $968 million at the box office, a diamond-selling soundtrack, and still the highest-grossing hand-drawn animation ever made. But they didn't stop there. You had Pocahontas, Hercules, Mulan, and Tarzan rounding out the decade, each with their own signature style, emotional arcs, and genuinely original stories. These weren't just cash grabs. These were labors of love. And you know what? The numbers prove it. Every one of these movies made hundreds of millions at the box office. The soundtracks? Multi-platinum sellers. The Lion King went diamond. The Little Mermaid? 6 times platinum. Beauty and the Beast? Aladdin? Pocahontas? All 3 times platinum. That kind of cultural and financial dominance, that doesn't happen by accident. Disney had something rare. Heart, vision, and actual storytelling power. And let's not forget the messages behind these films. Back then, Disney was teaching kids how to be brave, honest, kind, and independent, without turning every story into a lecture. They blended fantasy and life lessons in a way that stuck with you. They even had range. If the animated stuff wasn't your thing, there was a whole other world of live-action hits, like Cool Runnings, The Mighty Ducks, Angels in the Outfield, The Parent Trap, Hocus Pocus, all bangers in their own right. This was peak Disney, the kind of era where you'd wear out your VHS tape from rewinding the songs, the kind of movies where you actually cared if the characters lived or died, the kind of stories that stuck with you 20 years later. But of course, all good things come to an end. Pixar, the studio that saved Disney, and got swallowed by it. Now, while Disney was dominating the 90s with hand-drawn fairy tales and singing animals, something revolutionary was quietly brewing behind the scenes. Pixar. This wasn't just a cool little animation company. This was the future. Founded by tech and art nerds, Pixar was developing cutting-edge CGI while Disney was still flipping through sketchbooks. Their first major breakthrough? Toy Story in 1995. the first ever fully computer-animated feature film that wasn't just a tech flex. It had heart, it had humor, it had Tom Hanks and Tim Allen, and it made $373 million worldwide. Toy Story changed the game. It proved animation could be smart, emotional, and appeal to everyone, not just kids. Pixar followed it up with A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, all massive hits. And most importantly, they were original. Each one was a fresh world, a new idea. No remakes, no reboots, no live-action nostalgia grabs, just pure creative storytelling. Meanwhile, Disney's animation division was starting to fall behind. Films like Atlantis, Treasure Planet, and Home on the Range were flopping hard. The magic was wearing off, and the mouse was sweating. So what did Disney do? They bought Pixar. In 2006, Bob Iger made the deal of the decade, a $7.4 billion acquisition that, at the time, looked like Disney saving Pixar. But in reality, it was Pixar saving Disney. Here's the catch. Pixar only agreed to the deal under one condition. Creative control stays with them. John Lasseter wasn't about to let Disney executives ruin the stories they were telling. And honestly, that boundary worked. For a while. Pixar's golden streak continued. Ratatouille, WALL-E, Up, Toy Story 3, Inside Out. Finding Dory, all critical darlings, all box office hits. Pixar was holding the Disney brand together, one Oscar at a time. But slowly, Disney couldn't help themselves. As the 2010s rolled on, you could start to feel it. The magic was fading. The sequels were piling up. And somewhere between Cars 3 and Lightyear, that old Pixar spark, it started to dim. It wasn't about telling bold stories anymore. It was about keeping shareholders happy. And for Disney, Pixar was no longer a partner. It was a content machine. That's when things really started to change. The corporate takeover era, when Disney stopped creating and started collecting. So, by the time the late 2000s rolled around, Disney had a decision to make. Their original content? Flopping. Pixar? Keeping them alive? But Bob Iger, Disney's then CEO, had a different vision. Why take risks building new stories when you can just buy the ones already dominating the box office? And that's exactly what they did. Enter Marvel, 2009. Disney bought Marvel Entertainment for $4 billion, and they were smart about it. They let Kevin Feige, Marvel's president, keep control. And that man had a vision. What followed was one of the most successful storytelling experiments in modern cinema. Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, The Avengers. Movie after movie built toward one epic climax. Infinity War and Endgame, which pulled in a combined $4.8 billion worldwide. Superhero fatigue wasn't even a thing, yet Marvel was printing money. And Disney was winning. Again, then came Star Wars, 2012. Disney bought Lucasfilm for another $4 billion. And if Pixar saved Disney in the 2000s, Marvel made them kings of the 2010s. Star Wars? That was supposed to be their crown jewel. Except, this one didn't go quite as planned. Yes, The Force Awakens broke box office records, but longtime fans, they were furious. Disney threw out George Lucas's original trilogy plans, handed the franchise to multiple directors with completely different visions, and the result was chaos. The Last Jedi split the fandom in half. The Rise of Skywalker tried to fix it and only made it worse. Even Rogue One, arguably the best of the Disney Star Wars films, only succeeded because of last-minute rewrites and reshoots. And as the movies flopped harder, Disney scrambled to pump out TV content instead. And then, the shopping spree continued. They bought ABC and ESPN, bought a stake in video games, but flopped there too. Bought theme parks, sports teams, real estate, all to diversify. Then, in 2019, the biggest swing of all, they bought 21st Century Fox for $71.3 billion. Not just the movies, the whole studio. That meant The Simpsons, X-Men, Deadpool, Avatar, Family Guy, entire legacies, now under the Disney umbrella. And that was the moment it became clear. Disney wasn't just a film studio anymore. They were a monopoly on nostalgia. They weren't trying to create magic. They were trying to own it. Lock it down, rebrand it, and resell it to you in 4K with a Disney Plus subscription. So yeah, on paper, Disney looked unstoppable. Box office records, billion-dollar hits, total brand dominance. But underneath all that success, the cracks were already forming. The collapse begins, the woke wars, streaming overload, and a studio in panic mode. So here's where things start to spiral. After dominating for a decade with Marvel and Pixar, Disney got comfortable. Too comfortable. And instead of focusing on story, emotion, and that old-school Disney charm, they became obsessed with branding, messaging, and controlling the narrative. And in doing that, they walked headfirst into what a lot of people now call the woke wars. Let's be clear up front. Inclusion, diversity, representation, these are not bad things, not even close. But Disney wasn't doing this with care or nuance. They were doing it with a checklist. You've probably heard the phrase, go woke, go broke. That's the internet's way of saying that when companies make big political or identity-based decisions in their content, and it feels forced or preachy, it turns audiences off. And Disney? They walked straight into that backlash. Lightyear, 2022, Pixar's first same-sex kiss. A nice step in representation? Sure. But the way it was shoehorned in, plus the weird decision to replace Tim Allen as Buzz, backfired hard. The movie flopped, especially overseas, where it was banned in several countries. Strange World, 2022, their first openly gay lead character. Again, sounds progressive. But no one knew it existed. It had zero marketing and ended up being one of the biggest box office disasters in Disney's history. The Little Mermaid, 2023, casting Halle Bailey as Ariel sparked an online firestorm. Racism played a part, no doubt. But a lot of the criticism wasn't about race. It was about nostalgia fatigue, awkward CGI, and a perception that Disney was changing things just to make a point. And then there was the big one. Snow White, 2025. Before it even hit theaters, this remake was already radioactive. Rachel Zegler, the lead, basically said she hated the original. The backlash was immediate, and it snowballed into one of the worst PR disasters Disney's ever faced. The box office tanked. The reviews were brutal. And Disney was silent. Meanwhile, streaming was imploding. Remember how Disney launched Disney Plus in 2019? It was supposed to be their answer to Netflix, a direct line from their vault to your couch. And at first it worked. The Mandalorian was a hit. WandaVision got people talking. They dropped Marvel show after Marvel show. Loki, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Ms. Marvel, She-Hulk. But by 2022, people were over it. Too many shows, too much content, no cohesion, no stakes, just noise. Marvel fatigue set in. Star Wars fatigue set in. And Disney Plus started hemorrhaging money, losing billions. So what did they do? They laid off 7,000 employees and slashed their content budget by $5.5 billion. But instead of fixing the stories, they just tried to cut costs. So, why are they still doing it? If it's costing them millions, if fans are walking away, if critics are calling out the writing, the casting, the politics, why hasn't Disney pulled back? The short answer? They can't. Let me introduce you to something called the Corporate Equality Index, or CEI. It's a score given out by the Human Rights Campaign, a powerful LGBTQ plus lobbying group in the US. It rates how inclusive your company is, especially in areas like marketing, workplace policies, public stances, and corporate responsibility. Disney has scored a perfect 100 for 16 years straight. That's not by accident. It's very strategic. Because here's the kicker. Major investment firms, like BlackRock or Vanguard, use these CEI scores when deciding where to put their money. A bad score equals less investment. Less investment equals less stock value. Less stock value equals CEO gets fired. So to protect themselves financially, Disney has to keep scoring high, which means they have to stay loud on social issues, keep releasing content that checks the boxes, and continue pushing public-facing initiatives, even if it hurts their storytelling. It's like corporate blackmail. You want the money? You play the game. So yes, the Disney we grew up with may be gone. But the one that replaced it? It's playing a very different game. And unfortunately, winning isn't about storytelling anymore. If you made it this far, seriously, thank you. Drop a comment below. What do you think Disney needs to do to fix this? Or is it already too far gone? Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on that little bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. Until then, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.